Yeah, let's see. Hopefully everyone can see this. Can you see this all right, yeah? Okay, so everyone, thanks for logging in. My name is Mick Veerspouw. I'm based in Donegal in Buncrana, where I run a small little business, all to do with honeybee conservation. And we're trying to get like a proper platform running where we get like a sustainable population of honeybees throughout Donegal, and then hopefully in longer term, like all over Ireland. But at the moment, we're just basing ourselves in Donegal itself, like where we're trying to aim to get about one suitable habitat for honeybees, like per square mile. So obviously you can see straight away what kind of a big undertaking it will be in the long run. We'll be delving into it now a wee bit shorter now into the presentation, like what exactly is entailed in it. But just the area where I'm living is 300 square kilometers. So you're talking roughly 200 hives I have to put up just to create these habitats for honeybees. And once I go further into Donegal, like obviously the area gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And obviously I'm not able to do it all on my own, because especially once I want to move kind of further on into the rest of Ireland, you're talking thousands and thousands of hives like that has to be put up like to create this suitable habitat. But yeah, so that's kind of my own background. Like I'm originally from Holland. I studied landscape management, forestry, and I did horticulture as well, like and conservation techniques. Once I done that, like that's now nearly 25 years ago. I was very fortunate that through my college I was able to travel throughout Europe to do my studies. I was able to go to different countries, into different universities, and do like a 3-month project over there in each of the countries. And through that, like I found out that there was like lots of issues with the environment and the conservation that was being done in the different countries. And actually, when I came to Ireland, it was probably one of the worst ones I've seen from my point of view. So I decided to come back to Ireland once I finished my studies, and I came here. When was it? 99. I came here, and I moved first to Galway, where I set up a contractor's business, like where we looked after all the national parks. We did a lot of repair and zone management, and we looked after all the big parks, like from roughly from Sligo straight down to as far as Ennis and as far in as Offaly. So it was kind of more protecting what was there and obviously improving it as well over time, which was very interesting. Saw lots of different places, but then unfortunately the recession hit, and obviously when you're running a conservation business, you're the first one to get axed by the government, because obviously there was no money then anymore for anything to do with nature. So I had to give it up. Actually sold my business off at the time, and I moved up to Donegal. And obviously because I changed location, obviously I had to temporarily get some different work as well. Like, so I actually went into the organic farming. In the organic farming, we ran a vegetable farm, which was about 30 acres, which I took on for a company. And very soon I found out like that there was lots of issues around here, like with pollination of the early crops. The site where we were working on was kind of based on kind of located on a fairly high hill, and very little flora and fauna was around the area. It was all kind of bogland around us. So the initial, I started to kind of look like what was possible to improve it, and I started planting loads of verges along the fields, just for pollinators to kind of draw them into the area, which after a while like started to improve. And from there on, my kind of interest in pollinators and bees started to kind of gain a bit of momentum. And through unfortunate a moment, like a friend of mine, he passed away. He was a beekeeper, and it was his wife. Then she said like I was the right person to take on these honeybees. So I actually ended up with a couple of hives of honeybees myself, but obviously I have no proper understanding of it at the time, like how to manage them and how to look after them. But because of my background in the conservation and all proper environmental studies as well, I kind of looked what was more suitable for the bees than for me, because initially I did a course like in normal beekeeping, conventional beekeeping, which I had lots of questions that needed to be answered once I finished the course, like, and all the people that ran the course weren't able to answer them. So I started to look into more sustainable way of keeping bees, like just for pollination first. And from there on, my business kind of started up. The whole idea came about, Boomtreebees. So it's all just about providing suitable habitat, foraging grounds like for the honeybees, and through that, like that will kind of spiral on, like, because obviously once you get lots of honeybees into an area, and other pollinators to pollinate all the crops, they pollinate all the hedgerows, the trees. So from that on, they bear loads of fruit, which is then beneficial for other wildlife like birds. And then there's just kind of a knock-on effect then, and obviously over time you kind of started to see like a proper sustainable environment around you, and that's what we're trying to aim for. We do this through educational programs as well, where we go out and teach all different types of classes and talks and workshops we do, like but it's just to kind of share the knowledge that I've gained over the last 25 odd years, to share it with people, and then to inspire them as well, like to make even the smallest amount of improvement in their own area or in their own garden where possible. So getting back to our honeybees, once we kind of look, and obviously loads of people like that might have their own wee garden, and they're trying to improve it and make it more pollinator friendly. There's lots of different things that can be done. Just going out like and plant your pollinator plants, like your more herbaceous plants and all that kind of different variants. You could go in for more native trees or shrubs. But if you really want to kind of get an understanding of what's needed, we need to kind of take like a proper close-up of the honeybees and their need. So once we do that, I don't know, for people that have seen honeybees or know exactly what they look like, but it's always to have a bit of an understanding of it to make the right decisions then for your own place, or maybe in your local community, wherever it is that you want to make an improvement. You need to find out first what their needs are before you make the changes yourself, because you can go about and start planting lots of different crops and whatever it is, like flowers, shrubs and everything, but maybe those are not actually suitable for your honeybees. or if you're looking maybe to plant trees that might be possible then for honeybees to take up like in longer years, you have to take into consideration the age of the trees, how long it takes, and all these kind of things. So from that point of view, to get your understanding of a proper colony and what it needs, like a normal colony is kind of a build-up of, well, roughly in between 30 and 40,000 honeybees. Of that, you have 3 different types of bees like within the colony. You have one queen, you got lots of worker honeybees, which are female, and you have then some drones as well, the drones and the male bees. So here you got a picture of the different ones like that would be living within the colony. So you can see there on the left, like the worker honeybee, like those would be the ones that you see out and about on the flowers, foraging away either for nectar, either for pollen, or sometimes you might see them going for water as well. Very rarely you might see them going onto trees where they actually collect a bit of resin as well, which they use to turn into propolis for the health. They propolize the inside of the hive itself, which benefits the overall health of the colony. But yeah, so as I said, like that second one in the middle, the queen honeybee, there's only one of those like within a colony. She's the one that kind of holds the whole colony together. She lets off a pheromone constantly while she is present within the hive, and all the other bees, like as long as they can get that scent, they just do their normal work. If something happened to that queen, that maybe she failed or something like, or she died of either natural cause or maybe something else, then automatically what would happen like is that the worker honeybee would go straight away into like an alarm mode, like where they start to produce a new queen. They actually pick one of the latest eggs that was laid by their late queen and give it like a special cell, and they then nurture that then until it develops like after 16 days, and that will turn then into a new queen. That new queen, obviously, because she hasn't been fertilized yet, she has to mate then, and that's where the drones come in, the male bees. The male bees, they kind of hang about like just in case for those kind of situations that for some reason like that original queen would fail. So they then get to mate with the new queen, the virgin queen. She comes out of the hive for a brief period, where she then, in her mating flight, she would mate to up to 15 to 20 different drones, male bees. So once that happens, then she goes back to the hive, and then she just continues on then the work, just laying eggs constantly all day. So her process, to kind of give you an idea, I'll bring this one up here. So say your newly mated queen, like she goes about, and the minute she's born, like she already has the full capacity of her eggs within her. So that's why, as you look back at that earlier picture, that's why she's much larger than the worker bees, because she can carry up to a couple of million eggs within her. They're already there. The only thing that isn't happened yet to fertilize. She fertilizes as she lays the egg. So she decides the sex of each individual egg that's been laid. But 98% of the egg that she lay is all worker brood. Only a small percentage is the drone brood. But she would go about, the honeybees, they'd be working away, building their honeycomb, within the hive. And anytime there is a cell available, the queen would walk in and make sure it's all proper. She would then put her abdomen into it and actually stick a tiny little egg in the bottom of the cell. As you can see there in the first wee picture there. And she sticks it in, and it literally looks like a tiny little grain of rice. That grain of rice sits there for a couple of days, and then it hatches, and then it turns into a larva. That larva then gets fed by the worker bees, some royal jelly, you call it. They keep doing that for a couple of days, and by day 9, the larva is that well developed that it's getting ready for its metamorphosis. So what the worker bee do then, they actually close the cell, and you can just see it there on the screen. If I bring the pointer over, you can see that little cap along here where the worker bees actually have closed in the cell itself. So what they do is, like, they make sure that the larvae is completely protected, so nothing can happen to it. So it can then go into its full its metamorphosis, and then end up then 11 days later as an adult bee. The adult that you see here crawling out at day 21, that would be a worker bee. If it was a case that the queen decided that it is a drone, it would take an additional 4 days. It would take 25 days, like, for a drone to develop. So you can actually see in between the 3 different variants, the queen, she gets special attention by the worker bees. Like, so she hatches in 16 days, the worker bees 21, and the drones 25 days. So all developments are slightly different as we go along. So whenever she lays the egg, she then obviously goes about, like the queen, when she, this time of the year now, she would be laying in and around 2,000 eggs per day. So it's quite a substantial amount, like, if you take it kind of in consideration, that the bees, the colony would grow that rapid. You're talking, because we're just gone past the swarming period. I'll discuss that a wee bit now shortly as well. But the colony has reduced. They have kind of relocated to a different area, but the small part of the colony stayed behind. So at most colonies at the moment, they're sitting on about 25,000 bees, but that queen is laying away, and she lays up to 2,000 eggs a day. So very rapidly, by the end of the month, you have a full-size colony again. You're talking about 40 odd, maybe 45 odd thousand bees within the hive. So it's very important for those things, like to make sure that they get the right situation as well, like where everything within the hive is healthy, because as she lays away, like, and the little larvae are developing, there's lots of factors that can jeopardize development of these eggs as well. So as they go along, that bee then, as it hatches fully healthy, like, it automatically then starts working in the hive. There's no real boss within the hive, like, telling the new bees what to do, or any of the bees. It's all programmed within the bee itself. So as the bee hatches, it literally takes a couple hours, like, for it to kind of to mature outside the cell. And then the first couple of days, then it goes straight away into, like, cleaning mode, where it cleans out old cells, like where bees have hatched. And then it moves on then after a couple of days, like, and it goes into feeding the larvae. After that, then a couple of days again, say about 6-7 days, they get then the task to start building honeycomb where needed. It moves on then again, like once it gets to nearly 2 weeks, it then collects food from foragers that are out and about. All this time, this new bee is like still inside the hive. It hasn't really flown out yet, only real briefly for a couple of minutes just to kind of take an orientation flight where the hive is. But the first 3 weeks, that bee like stays inside the hive constantly, doing all kind of the normal task like helping out. So then, say that when it gets to about 2 weeks, so it collects the food like from the forager. The foragers are coming back, and it's actually not those bees that are putting the food in the cells. They actually pass it on. What they're doing is the bee, say when it collects nectar, it then regurgitates that nectar and passes it on to one of those young bees, who then puts it in one of the cells. So the foragers, the ones that are more than 3 weeks old, the only thing they do from that day on, like they just constantly go out like and collect food all the time. And then after the 2 weeks, like it gets a task then maybe to guard the hive, and then once it's fully developed, like once it's gone through the whole process, after the 3 weeks, then that bee will then turn into a forager as well. Where it just flies all day, every day, obviously weather depending, to collect either nectar, pollen, or water until it actually dies. This time of the year, the worker bee don't last as long, on average about 6 weeks. Later on in the season, as the food gets more scarce, it could last a bit longer, and then in the winter months, the lifespan of a worker honeybee can be up to 3 or 4 months, because obviously at that stage they've collected all their food stores, and they don't have to be flying in and out, because that's what shortens the lifespan of the worker bee, because they literally fly themselves to death, which is sad to say, but that's kind of the whole process of them. So when we look at these bees like going out and about and collecting their nectar and pollen and water, they obviously performing a very important task as well for us, for ourselves, and for other wildlife as well, like for plants and everything. And it's all to do with the pollination. As it states there, like one single bee can visit up to 5,000 flowers, which is quite a lot. Like if you kind of multiply that over the lifespan of that flying period, you're talking 3 weeks. You're talking a serious amount of flowers that one single bee visits. So for in the long run, like for ourselves, for our nature around us, like it's really important to have these pollinators and honeybees like around us, because 70% of our vegetables that we grow are being pollinated by pollinators. So that's why it's so important to have them around. But when we're looking at some of these pictures, you can see here like big, huge pollen sacs. Like so, the pollen sacs are attached to the hind legs of the honeybee, and then you'll see these little yellow balls here at the end, where the bees just goes from flower to flower, gathers all the pollen, and attaches it onto the pollen sacs, and then brings it back to the hive. And obviously, we all know that loads of flowers like have different types of pollen, and it's actually very nice. Like once you go out and you might be able to spot yourself a honeybee, you'll be able to tell with a chart where that bee has been foraging on what type of plant. Because here on the right you have a little snowdrop, and you can see the tiny little orange ball here that's attached. That's pollen there as well, like, and that's from snowdrops there, that's collected. In the bottom picture then you see here there's a bit of a mix of pieces of honeycomb, but the very colorful bit here of them kind of circling. That's a pocket of pollen, and you can see there's what 4 or 5 different types of colors. There's actually a tiny bit of a blue there as well, like that most likely is from borage that's being collected. So it's very nice, like if you're out and about, to actually get one of these charts, and these are very easily available online. If you just type in pollen chart for honeybees, you'll get something similar to this, and it gives you a great bit of insight what the bees in your local area are foraging on. Once it gets later on, then maybe if you are interested in getting some bees yourself, or maybe locating a hive on your property, you'll be able to tell them throughout the season as well where there is maybe shortages of pollen, especially like earlier on in the year and in and around June. Normally June is kind of like a dry spell for a couple of weeks, but there is certain plants that can be incorporated to provide in those little gaps, and there's lots of information on this, like earlier on in the year, obviously your little snowdrops, crocuses, some daffodils as well. The likes of pussy willow is very good as well for very early in the year, and it provides plenty of pollen as well. So having this knowledge of what the bees are bringing in, and if you notice like times that there isn't anything coming in, that's where maybe you can step in and actually provide some forage for them over time. So once we kind of move on then and have a kind of a proper look inside a hive, a lot of people are kind of in the understanding that when they're talking about honeybees, that they would be living in little square boxes, nice little dainty square boxes, and the beekeeper is looking after them, making sure everything is fine, and at the end of the season then the beekeeper would come in and actually take the honey away. First of all, I want to make straight, like the honey is not a byproduct. The honey is the sole survivor thing for the honeybees in the winter months. The bees fly all year round to collect as much as possible and to store away as much as possible, like sometimes up to 20-25 odd kilos of honey that they put away for the winter months, because obviously in the winter months there's no flowers, no food available, and it is too cold as well for the honeybees to be able to go out and fly. That's why you wouldn't notice honeybees very often. You see them very seldom, maybe on a real nice sunny winter's day. You might see them coming out, but the only really thing they're coming out for is actually to go and use the toilet and nothing else. But yes, naturally, honeybees be living inside trees. Here's a little diagram of how it would be like. So you have a normal tree, it grows away, like, and over time it might be either through storm damage, or maybe there is a fungus that actually moves into the tree. You would get a certain size cavity inside the tree. This cavity has to be obviously big enough to sustain. Oh, what's this? Get it right. To sustain, but when you look at the little diagram there, like you have lower bees prefer to have an entrance lower down into the cavity of the tree, and once they take up residence, and then I just scroll back, obviously initially they start making lots of honeycomb. So this is one of the hives that I normally would make, but here you could see the ceiling is there, like, so obviously in the top of the cavity the bees actually start to draw down fresh honeycomb, because obviously they have to provide space, like, for their new queen to start laying eggs. So in each of those little cells, like the queen will come along, like, and she actually starts laying eggs in it. Here it's very good to see as well in this picture the different colors. So you have here a very light piece of honeycomb, and then here you see like a slightly darker shade. The darker shade is where the queen is laying lots of eggs. So it's getting used over and over again, and constantly, obviously, they're putting a bit of royal jelly and food into it. So you get like a residue building up, and that's why you see like the slight discoloration of the comb itself. But yes, to get back to this one, so the bees obviously, once they have started drawing their comb, like, and they might fill that whole chamber within one season with pieces of honeycomb. The honeycomb you're talking, let's see, I have actually a piece here. So I don't know if people can see it. So you're talking about 35 mil in thickness, and they would have a storage in that, like, and this piece would have been attached to like a little roof space. So what the bees automatically do is they have the brood, all the eggs are being laid in this real dark pattern. You can see then there's like a band comes across it. It's a bit broken off here, like, but normally there's a band of white all the way across where they put all the food store. So their pollen, nectar, and obviously honey stores in as well. So because they're trying to be as efficient as possible when they're rearing their brood, the brood will be sitting here. So if you have the food supply very nearby, it can be very quickly accessible. Like if the new eggs is being laid, food is being given out. So it kind of naturally has like a band all the way around it. And that's is it still working?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah,
but we lost your, lost your
I don't know,
screen.
something went completely wrong.
Well,
did you miss anything, or?
No, I don't think so. The only thing I don't have is your, we obviously don't have your screen up anymore.
All right, okay, right, I'll bring that back up again then. Where are we? That one.
Just to add extra interest to it. Hello?
Ellipse shape of brood, and that crosses straight across maybe 5-6 pieces of honeycomb. So you actually have kind of like a ball in the center, and it's completely surrounded then with food above it and along the edges, along the side as well. And then at the bottom there would be a small bit of space as the bees are constantly working the comb, opening up cells and closing them. There's always a bit of debris, so in the bottom you'll get like a little debris layer, which then over time, once the colony is kind of set up maybe for a season or something, gets taken over by some wax moss as well, like moving in to be cleaning up any of the debris. So the bees actually creating like a proper ecosystem inside this cavity. And it all works very closely. It works together with the tree, any of all the little insects that are living on the floor of the cavity. So it's very difficult to replicate this in a normal standard beehive, because obviously the beekeeper, he's forcing the bees the completely wrong way around. The bees are naturally drawn, want to draw the comb downwards. When you're looking at a normal beehive, the bees are forced to work up to it, and the beekeeper, he keeps adding space above them, so which is obviously not very suitable, like for a more sustainable approach like of beekeeping. So by looking at this, and yeah, here you can see as well, like what if you're out and about, like you actually might spot it as well. Like you might be very lucky that you would find a tree like that has a natural hole in it and a cavity which has been taken up. But unfortunately, in our own, well, in my area here anyway, most of the real old trees that are either ill or diseased, or maybe are in their climax stage and starting to die off, for health and safety reasons, they get taken down, unfortunately. And it happens so often that I come across people cutting down trees, and the only reason they're saying, like, oh, the tree's rotten. Proper tree management would take care of this. You could reduce the crown, and the tree could live for many, many more years to come, and then obviously be able to sustain a honeybee colony within. But 9 out of the 10 times, people around here and in the rest of Ireland as well, like, they just take down the tree because they don't want to take any risks. But it's just unfortunate, like that, due to the lack of education, proper tree management, like most of these trees seem to be disappearing, which is an awful shame. But yeah, looking at bit of a close-up of some of the comb. Obviously, I showed you a piece there, but here's a few pictures as well. Like, so here on the top, this will be just all pollen in this, like a whole different range of different types of pollen. There's about 4 or 5 different colors in that there, which the bees obviously use then to feed the young. On the picture on the left here, you would have a piece of comb. Here in the middle, the kind of creamy colored is actually brood. So this is where the queen would have been laying away, and obviously this these eggs now have developed, say, after day 10 is where the bees came along, like, and actually closed it off. So they would be sitting there, like, for a little while, like, until they hatched in at day 21. But you can see here, like, the close proximity in between the brood and the honey stores. All this here on top is all honey stores where the bees sit around. So you can actually see they're trying to create like an arch shape, like, above it, just to make it really easy and quick for them to be able to feed the new eggs and larvae all the time. So here you have one other type of cell, like, because those kind of cells here are fairly flat. So you'll be able to see it here in the middle of the picture. You see this type of brood pattern here. You'll be able to see the same here, like, but then just here along the edge, you'll see kind of little dome-shaped cells. Those cells are especially made, like, for the drones, because when we look back there at that picture from the 3 different types of bees, like, within the colony, you remember, like, that the drone was slightly larger than the worker bee, but they still use the same kind of cells as the worker bee, like, but what the bees then do, like, because that drone is going to develop slightly larger, they actually create a tiny little like a little dome-shaped capping over the top of, so for the extra bit of expansion to develop that drone bee. And lastly, then you would have a queen cell. So here you have, I'm kind of circling it there, like, that is a queen cell there. So you can see it kind of looks like a big giant peanut. And you can see as well, like, just the size of it. Like, so the bees, what they normally do, they would use one of the original cells and then actually attach this big giant cup onto it. They then put a tiny little egg in it and obviously feed it much more like than a normal worker bee, and then eventually they would close it off. So that would hatch, like, so that probably there is about 13 to 14 days old. You can see it's not fully matured yet, like, because the bottom of it is still very light in color. So there's a couple of more days to go. So as it nearly comes to maturity, like that bottom section of the cell goes really dark brown and brittle. Then the queen then is able to chew her way out of the cell, like once he hatches. But see, this process, like obviously when you would see something like this, is when either a colony is outgrown its space, and then I get back to what I mentioned earlier on, the swarming. So you would have a colony living in a space like this here. Obviously, on average, like the bees prefer about 40 liters of volume, and in a certain point of the year, and normally it's say middle of May, June. There is some in July as well. Like that, the colony gets that big that there's no more room inside for a hive for all the bees. So then once a couple of them, actually in this picture on here, actually no, there's another one here, there's one in here as well. So where the bees would be drawn away, this is say them making a couple of them is just for security in case something happens to one of them. They always have like a backup, but on average you would have 2 or 3 of those queen cells. And the minute these queens are built and closed off, like capped off, the old queen then that's still within the
I've lost you. Where are you? Oh, there you go. Hello, sorry.
Yes, I'm getting chucked out again.
I don't know why I did that, sorry. No. Oh dear.
No, I know where, isn't it? But is it on your side, is it, or is it the side?
I don't actually know which one it is because I'm still here and then I just keep losing you. And I can see everybody else, but not you. So you're, yes.
So maybe it's me then, is it?
I think so. I mean, so because I've still got everybody else. All right, you're going for a walk. The joys of experimenting with these. Right. Oh, okay. Well, I'll be back in a minute.
Right, do you hear me now? No?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes? All right,
Yeah.
okay. Well,
just got to put your screen up. You're very dark, though. That's the only thing.
yeah, but sure, I can still share this click, so...
Yeah, no problem.
Right, try that and see.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for those that...
Maybe there's too many people in the house on the freaking Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I've thrown everybody off mine, so I think I think it's yours, she says.
Yeah, no, it must be no, but no, I'm just looking at the connection there. It's full, like, so unless we're just overloading.
Oh no.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had my my two other daughters. They landed all as well here in the house, so they're probably going mental on the Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Oh dear. Okay. Well, we are back. That's the main thing.
Yes. So where was I? Yeah. So the swarming. Yeah. So once they have built these queen cells and they're completely closed off, the old queen then she takes about 40% of the bees with her. So she leaves the hive and those bees all swarm around it. So you can see there in the first picture where there's a huge cloud like in the sky, like all the little tiny dots, all those little tiny dots are all honeybees. So what happens there is the bees go about, they protect as she flies through the air, but obviously because the queen is so much larger as well, she can't fly that far. She would land on a branch nearby, where then all the other bees would cluster around her to protect her, because obviously that queen is the only survival they would have, like for the colony. If that queen gets lost or dies or something happens to her, it's the death of the colony then as well, because obviously she has to produce all the new brood as well. So they then cluster around her, and you can see that's here in the picture here on the right, and they just sit there. After a while, then once it all kind of settles down, about 200 to 300 bees then take up a new task as scout bees. They then go about and start looking for suitable locations. This whole process can take sometimes half an hour, but if there's nothing suitable around, it can take up to a couple of days until there is a mutual agreement, like for a suitable spot. As this happens, then the bees then directly move across, and that process only takes maybe a few minutes. But unfortunately, as I kind of briefly touched on earlier on, like there seem to be a few issues as well, like. And one of their issues is obviously suitable housing for them. As I mentioned there, a lot of the older trees like that have a possibility for honeybees like to set up a new colony. All those trees are getting cut down. You can see here a real nice big hollow tree, which over time would have been perfectly for honeybees to set up like a new colony. Same here in the bottom, like just starting here, and then you have a small cavity. Over time, that cavity could have gotten bigger and made it big enough, like for those honeybees, like to set up. Beside that, like that's obviously not the only issue. Our landscape is changing all the time as well, and there is less and less flowers about. When I grew up, like I remember these kind of pictures on the landscape, like where you would have like big meadows full of flowers, like in wildlife and everything, which would provide like perfect foraging ground for honeybees as well. But unfortunately, this is changing constantly, and especially when I come over here, I noticed a lot of destruction as well, like from anything that was left about. Here's a picture at the bottom where you still had like an old kind of a hedgerowy kind of a structure, and in no time, like the farmers, they want to remove this because obviously it's too much maintenance. They take it all away, and then they put like a wire fence in. So because of these kind of issues, we need to kind of address these, like, and because these swarms, like, obviously need to have a location somewhere to go and nest. And what happens is, if they don't find suitable homes, you would see something like this, where bees obviously look for second best options, and a lot of the times you would have roof spaces in houses, old buildings, shops, or in cavity walls, where bees take up residence, obviously to the dismay of the owner, because it can cause huge issues within the house. Sometimes you see them like moving in through air vents, and over time they can actually end up inside the house as well, like foraging. And obviously when the bees are trapped inside, like they get kind of anxious, because you can actually see it on this picture here. You can actually see picture or bees, they're actually on the inside of the window, and obviously this swarm is just about to move in. They're just getting ready now. They're all clustering around the tiny little holes there somewhere, but if that would be allowed, like, then it could cause serious concern, like added to the resident or maybe their children or whatever. Like a lot of people, they might have allergic reactions to honeybees. So those things kind of need to be avoided, and we do this through creating suitable housing. And what we do this with is timber that's either felled through natural causes, and we would go about and make hollow outs, trying to mimic the natural abode, like of like a honeybee in a nest. So here on the right, you would have like a tree that we hollow out, and then obviously we provide a bit of like waterproofing for the top piece, so the water doesn't affect hitting the log itself, because obviously you have like a cut exposed. But the roof itself, like, can be any kind of structure at all, like just a piece of wood or something, like with some waterproof material over the top of it. But mostly what we're putting out is these type here, when we actually hollow out logs and then actually put them in trees. We put them up about 4 to 6 meters over the ground, and we try to make it as close as possible for honeybees as we can. Like, so we work like in between 35 and 40 liter of a volume, and put some attractants in it, like all tiny bits of old honeycomb, what I was showing you earlier there. We stick them onto the roof, and then the likes of lemongrass oil or something, like, to attract them in it. We don't put bees in it, we just provide the housing. So those type of hives, like, we dot them all over the countryside. At the moment now, I put out 110 of them in my own area, and those are all taken up by bees now at the moment. So I'm hoping to kind of move that on, like, and spread out, and maybe even in your own area, like, if you're able to get something going, like that, in future years, like, we can get some up there as well. The whole process that providing these habitats, obviously, the hives that we're making, like, is only a short-term solution, because of the long-term solution is obviously we have to start planting more trees, and obviously we have to start looking at any of the remaining old trees, like, by proper management and actually safeguarding, like, for the future, because obviously whatever we have left, like, I think it's crucial, like, that we keep them, even trees that are now maybe 100 years, maybe 150 years old, and still in very good health. Those trees in time to come will be able to provide for maybe, like, when a limb breaks off or something, like an arm breaks off of the tree, like, and a cavity starts to occur, like, even with proper management, like, that tree can still live on for many years to come, without causing any issue at all. But the main thing what we're trying to aim as well, like, and we're trying to plant as much as possible, put out loads of trees in your local area, like, and even in your own garden, or if you can do it through schools and whatsoever. It's very important to do those kind of exercise, like, because obviously in years to come, those trees then would be able to provide suitable housing for those bees. Let's see, there we go. So, in, say, for yourselves, like, what can you do? as I said, like plant trees, obviously first of all, like, but then if you want to start providing some forage, like for the bees, there's lots of information like on the internet. Like here in Ireland, we're very lucky to have a pollinator plan that I think is getting renewed now next year as well. Like, but through the National Biodiversity Office down in Wexford, they have an all-Ireland pollinator plan drafted where you're able to get loads of information on what you can do, like, and what to plant for bees in your garden to get like a very diverse foraging. If you go onto the website of it, like, you'll find lots of different information on plants, trees, even on identifying different pollinators, bumblebees, and all that kind of things like that. That's really important, like, to bring across. So other thing then as well, very easy thing what you can do in your garden is don't cut the grass so often. Like, let whatever clover is in it, or maybe some other weeds, like, let them flower for a period of time, and then maybe when it's finished flowering, then cut your grass. Because I'd say nearly 9 out of the 10 lawns in the country would have a certain amount of weeds within the lawn, like, but just because we cut it so often, they never get the chance to flower properly. So by reducing the mowing regime in your own garden or in your own area, if you have like a little public area, like in an estate or whatever, by reducing that, like, you let them weeds give the chance, like, to flower properly, and obviously provide forage then for the bees and as well. So for our side, like, so what we exactly do, like I touched on it a wee bit before. We do a lot of information days, like talks and workshops. Hopefully, and I think if I'm saying this right, I think it's in September or the end of August, we're going to be actually given a log hive workshop on the grounds of the pod project, where we'll be building one of these here in the middle. It's an elevated because unfortunately on the grounds of the pod project, I don't think trees would be strong enough to be able to sustain one of these log hives. So these log hives, you're talking about 3 foot tall, like, and with a diameter of maybe 20 to 22 inches. And the total weight of most of them, you're talking in between 80 and 90 kilos. So you can't just hang them in any kind of tree. The tree it's going to be put in needs to be like very sturdy. It gets attached on like with proper straps all the way around it. And over time then, the only really management that we have, like once the bees move in, is that we check the straps every year. Obviously because the tree obviously is still living, and sometimes if the tree goes very rapidly, like we have to obviously adjust the tension as well on the straps, because otherwise the straps then can start causing issues for the tree as well, and that's what we don't want to happen. Like, so we go around like and check those every year. There's one other variant as well for people that want to have kind of a more hands-on experience, like with bees as well, where we have these freestanding log hives, and all 3, like they're all kind of the same. The volume inside 40 liters, like all the way across. Only one these ones that are slightly larger in space because they're sitting on the ground. So there's a lot of trunk material still below the hive, like the actual cavity inside the log. It's just to kind of give that extra bit of insulation because it's obviously standing freely on the ground, like, and it's able to get some condensation moving into the wood itself. And beside that, then we worked in as well, like with some communities where we do some landscaping works as well, like trying to create hedgerows as well. And then where possible, I get the chance sometimes like to provide some eco-friendly options for private gardens as well, where we're trying to cram in as many pollinator plants as possible, just to steer away like from your basic grass lawn, like maybe an odd wee shrub and tree there, by putting in lots of different pollinator plants for those little gardens as well. So that's kind of like a little introduction, and I was wondering, oh, here was a little video yesterday I'd attached. I can show it to you, like if it plays, hopefully it will. It might come up, it mightn't come up. Doing that. But yeah, then I getting kind of to the end of it then, and I don't know if anyone has any questions. I try my best to answer as much as I can. Let's see, stop this one. So I don't know, these are all unmuted, is it?
Yeah, so everybody's on mute, but they can either like raise their hand or just ask, or they can put it in the chats if they have questions that they'd like to ask. Because we can't, you're really dark, so we can't really see you. But they'll be able to hear.
I'm going to see now if my children have stopped using the Wi-Fi. There we go.
Very good. There you are. Perfect. So does anyone want to ask a question, or do they want to just put it in the chat and I'll ask it? Whichever you want to do. Just wait and give people a minute to write or to raise their hand. They've gone silent on me. I want to know a little bit about the insect corridors, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about that, just.
Yeah. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to link up like isolated areas, because obviously the landscape now is very fragmented. You'll have little pockets here and there, and through linking those together, you making like proper wildlife corridors. Those wildlife corridors then obviously can be used as well by honeybees to be foraging through those, by making it as diverse as possible, like in between trees, shrubs, and even smaller plants as well, like to make a proper mix. You'd be linking those corridors together, like, and over time you get like a more sustainable environment around you, because a lot of the times what you see is a particular insect or mammal or whatever it is stuck in a certain area because it's not able to move from one to the next. And it's the same with honeybees as well. Honeybees normally they fly, say, up to about 5 kilometers, but if they're in a certain area and around them there's absolutely nothing available, obviously it's much more difficult for them to actually start to move into a new area, and that's by providing these kind of corridors throughout countryside. You'll be able to make that happen. So in those corridors, obviously we put suitable the housing as well, like the log hives, so the bees can kind of migrate from one area into the next, just to make it handier for them.
Thank you. Yeah, I just think it's good to know that that's going on and that you're doing a lot of work on that, because we were talking about that a little bit before, weren't we? So
yeah.
Hang on a second. I've got lots of questions coming up.
Good.
1 second. I'm just sending a small child back to bed. Off you go. I'm asking questions now. I'll come say goodnight in a minute. The first question is, with log hives, is any type of wood okay, or are some better than others?
Is there some? Yes, there is a difference. It's all mainly to do with durability. Obviously, if you're using hardwood over softwood, the hardwood is going to last longer. So you get many more years out of it. Likes of oak, beech, sycamore, or ash or something. Especially with oak, like you get up to maybe 80 to 100 years, if proper cared for. A softwood, like you might only get maybe 20 years, maybe 25 years out of it. But for the bees' needs, it doesn't really matter. As long as their space is suitable, like it ticks the boxes of the 40 litre roughly mark, and an entrance kind of low down, the bees will occupy it anyway themselves.
Okay, well, that's reassuring, because I was just wondering about that. Any comment on natural foundation size and on varroa mite?
Yes, okay, well, that's we're going like slightly further in, but a lot of research is being done now with wild colonies, and this is not just in Ireland, it's all over the world that this research is being done, and it all comes back with the same kind of results, that the health of the wild colonies are much better than with kept colonies. The kept colonies are normally under well, a reasonable amount of stress, obviously, because the beekeeper, he constantly comes in and checks the hive. Bees don't prefer to be sitting on perfectly straight frames, square boxes. What this causes is like cold corners that you get like in the square boxes. As I said earlier on, like you would have a colony that's all kind of just clusters constantly like working through the space. By you providing a small diameter hole, like maybe 8-9 inches, those bees literally sit from wall to wall all the way around. So there's no chance for these cold corners then to occur. With varroa mite, is they actually prefer a slightly cooler climate inside the hive. So the square boxes are ideal for this, because obviously the varroa mite is able to withdraw themselves into these corners, like where the temperature is maybe 20-22 degrees, instead of in the middle of a colony up to 32 degrees. So it's an ideal breeding ground for them. But from the research that's being done, and from what I'm seeing as well, is like that the health of the wild colonies is much better. Number one, like, and I briefly touched on it there earlier on, like, was the propolis or the resin they collect from trees, which they turn into propolis. The propolis, they coat it all on the inside, around the entrance of the hive, all over the walls. And the propolis is actually an antiviral and antibacterial agent, like, so they coat it completely. So any bees that comes from outside comes inside. They literally cleanse themselves by walking on it. Secondly, then what happens, like, once the hive is completely coated in this propolis layer, when the bees are producing or they kind of transform the honey or the nectar into the honey, they get like a condensed air, so the water drop get in contact with this propolis as well, and the bees actually start to breathe this in and actually clean out their lungs as well, like, and the internal workings like of the bee are much healthier as well, so they're much less prone from catching any diseases from outside.
Thank you. That was very thorough. That was brilliant. Right. Do you have a plan of how to make the standing log hive? And is there a preferred type? Oh, you've already asked the preferred type of tree. But do you have a plan?
Do I have a plan? How do you mean a plan?
That's from Louise. Do you want to say anything?
What it looks like, is it?
I think so, yeah.
Well, I'm working on one here. Let's see. Can you see that there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So here's a piece. So I'm actually working on this one, but obviously during the workshop, like we'll be showing everyone anyway how to make it. But roughly about 1 meter high from the ground down to the bottom. The diameter here is 22 inches across, if possible, and then the cavity itself is 9 inches, 9 inches across. Once I core it out, and I get acquired volume then inside of about 40 liters. So from the top here, this will be the top. Like I'll build in like a proper ceiling, which will be insulated with all sawdust like that comes out of making the cavity itself. So stuff like this here, I bulk it up like in like a hessian bag, and that goes on top of the ceiling then to create that extra insulation for the winter months. And then obviously it gets a waterproof roof over the top of it, either it being like the real nice thatch ones or like a solid wooden structure. And then the only thing that's to be done then is to attach the legs. For the legs I use like fence posts at the moment, but sometimes I do come across fallen oak or something like timber, and I would use that. But it just gives that extra bit of durability, like especially with the legs. So it's like treated posts, these ones, and you can get them anywhere, anywhere in like a hardware place or something like, or a cooperative. That's just ordinary fencing material, like. So they get attached then to the hive like with bolts, and it gets put up then, and it's ready to go afterwards.
Fantastic.
But obviously all of it like we'll go into depth while we're doing the workshop anyway. So the person who was asking if they want to learn themselves like how to do it, they could join the workshop then later on in the year.
Okay, fantastic. And then so Shane says, would you recommend use of a, is that, I don't know how you say that, ware hive? I believe it supports a natural way of beekeeping also.
Yeah, ware hive. Yeah. That's when you go into natural beekeeping. What we've been talking about is honeybee conservation. So what we're trying to do here, you're trying to use as close as possible what the natural would be for the honeybees, and obviously that's just cavities in trees. So with these logs, we're only mimicking their natural situation.
Mm-hmm.
But the wire hive, yeah, it's very good for natural beekeeping, like, because you're allowing the bees to build natural comb. Obviously, you're still working with a square box, so there's still certain issues, especially in the winter months. But for a more sustainable approach, like for beekeeping, yes, it's a good model to go.
Okay, and then so just back on the types of wood, you said it didn't matter, but someone has queried whether it's soft spruce would work.
You can use it, yeah. It's just the sustainable length of time, like, because a piece of spruce you probably get, what will it be, probably 15 to 20 years out of it before it starts to really deteriorate.
Okay, so that's good to know, because obviously there's a lot of that about. So Shane also says, I have a friend who's just got a swarm into her roof. What do you recommend? Leave them or move them? And if moving, how?
If they not cause an issue, leave them. If they do cause an issue, then best thing to do is to approach a local beekeeper who does remove them. But then obviously they're probably going to end up in an ordinary hive. But you may be able to look around. I don't know exactly where the swarm is. But there is a few people like in the north, like they don't use any chemicals, and actually they have a more natural approach, like to beekeeping. So through the beekeeping groups, that are in the north, like you'll be able to get hold of these people, and they normally like to, for a small fee, like they'll remove them out of the roof.
Okay, good to know. How common are wild feral bee colonies?
How common? In my area, it's getting better, but obviously because I've been working on this now for a number of years. But people always think like that they're nearly gone, but they're surprised. I would say throughout the whole country, like you're probably talking maybe 100, maybe 200 different colonies, and that are proper wild honeybees itself. Like, so I'm talking like the native black bees.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, like what's happened is obviously same with that person who was asking the question of the bees moving into the roof. So the bees will go feral after a while as well, and obviously they start breeding then maybe in years to come, like with wild colonies, so they actually go back to wild again over time.
Okay, that's much less than I would have thought. I'm really surprised. So, but you're quite dark. Would you mind just turning a little so you're not in the light? Oh, that's perfect. There you go. So just, are there any issues with siting a log hive for wild bees on an area where there is known to be a conventional hive?
Is it what's a good sighting, is it?
Mm-hmm, yeah. But where there's known to be a conventional hive.
Oh, where there's known, you're never gonna stop, because I think at the moment now we're in like maybe, I think it's 12,000 beekeepers in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And you're always going to run against that, and it's getting more and more popular, like, because people are getting more aware, so they start to take up beekeeping, like. So no, it doesn't make any difference. I would still, you can still go ahead, like, and you'll be able to catch like a swarm as well.
Okay.
Because there's lots of see, but the bees around here that I'm mainly catching, like, they're say 80% black bee, and there may be somewhere along the line there may be a mix in it as well. Like, but I notice over time, like with certain colonies, like it actually is breeding out of it, so you'll end up with black bees again. So you just have to get started, like, and catch a swarm of bees, like in one of those log hives, and then over time you'll see them changing anyway, because they'll just evolve themselves.
Okay. Can you tell us more about the wild black bee?
What do they want to know?
That is the entirety of the question. So, James, do you want to add anything to that, or perhaps talk directly? Don't know. Okay. Oh, anything about ecology?
Anything about ecology for the black bee?
Mm-hmm.
So as we kind of discussed, like, so native or originally, like the black bee, like, would be living in natural cavities in trees, like, and for a long time they actually thought there was no black bees left, but when, and I think this is about 2.5 years ago, they did some research, like, where they actually went to test um, the kind of like the genetics, like, of the black bees, like, that we have here, and actually found that there was quite a few colonies which had the proper genetics, but no proper research was really done, like, in the wild colonies. So that's what's actually ongoing at the moment through the university in Galway. They're trying to get as much information as possible from people that have noticed or have seen wild colonies of bees, like, where they can actually then maybe take some samples off, like, and test those. And for, like, yes, they obviously originally they would have been like a forest creature. they'll be kind of located in all trees, like, and use those areas. But it's getting less and less and less because of obviously our changing environment, like, and where trees are getting cut down, like, the old woodlands, like, they're not getting managed properly, like, so everything is starting to fall down. Those old trees, like, with proper cavities in it, like, they're disappearing. So it's, unfortunately, I would just need to be a bit more upfront, like, and really get some changes happening as well ourselves.
So would you, yeah, so then that's my next question was slightly different from what I was going to ask, but any reintroduction programs?
Reintroduction of black bees?
Well, I think that's what is meant.
It's very well, if you want to do properly, like, obviously you're not going to introduce the bees. You're going to be working with the bees that are already there, and obviously make it proper and sustainable for them so they can actually thrive in certain areas. I don't think if you start reintroducing, first of all, like, you have to look where these bees are coming from. I know further south, like, there is breeders and breeding programs, and they're trying to reintroduce them, especially down in Waterford and Cork, where there's a couple of groups there. But I'm always a bit hesitant because obviously they've been breeding a particular type of bee in square boxes and then trying to let them out in the wild. But I don't think, in my view anyway, that you have a proper black Irish bee, because obviously it's been bred by beekeepers.
Okay. Yeah, so then, which goes back to then your creating your insect corridors being vital and making the habitat available.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and so I don't know if anyone else has any questions, but I was following you on Facebook and I wanted to ask you about you went to Australia, was it earlier in the year?
Yes, yeah. I was asked to go there after the horrendous fires over there, where huge areas of native rainforest, like, completely decimated, and obviously lots of different wildlife, plants and animals as well, like, lost lives, like, over it. So I was asked to go over there and to teach and to talk about the work that I was doing over here and the possibility what could have been done over there, because a lot of the trees were damaged and burned, but they still had the possibility to be used for making these log hives. Because obviously over there it's slightly different than here. These cavities in trees, like, is being used by lots of different animals as well. Like, you have what do you call them, sugar gliders, and possums as well, like, they would use these cavities. But because of the pure decimation of lots of these trees, and whatever was still usable, the forestry people, like, they went in and actually cut them down. So there was a huge number of natural habitats lost, like, in those areas. And we went about through working with local groups and the forest organization, and we were able to get our hands on these logs, like, that otherwise would have been used, like, in the timber production. And we actually turned them then into log hives, and actually then around the edges of the real affected areas, we were putting up these hives, obviously, to provide the habitat for these honeybees then as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching some of, or not watching, but looking at some of the little video clips and the pictures you put up. I mean, it looked like an amazing thing to do.
Yeah, it was a shocking thing to see, because obviously my background, I absolutely love trees and forests and everything. To be able to see the sheer size of the destruction was It was absolutely mind blowing. You can see something on the TV and it looks bad, but then when you actually standing in the middle of it, yeah, it's quite horrendous. We went to one certain area where we were climbing like a ridge line, like of a forest, which got really badly burned. And when we got to the top of it, there was actually no noise whatsoever. No
Wow.
insect, no birds, nothing, no noise. The only noise that was us walking through the charcoal.
Wow.
It was absolutely shocking. Yeah.
Yeah, hard to do, but good that you could at least do something, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what we were doing anyway, we were driving through these burned areas. We had bags of seeds with us, and we were just kind of casting them everywhere, all native tree seeds. So we were just throwing them everywhere, trying to get something going again over the years.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's good to hear about that, and thanks so much for this. I mean, I've really enjoyed this talk, and it's been wonderful. Oh, well, another question is, Mary Reynolds mentions non-native species like rhododendron were not good for local pollinators.
Yeah, so, some species, yeah, definitely. Always trying to stick with your native plants, which is always better, like, because when you're trying to provide forage, like, for native insects, there's no point like you going in, especially when you're bringing in foreign material like rhododendron or whatever. You can actually bring in diseases as well with them. And some of them might actually be invasive species then as well, like, which causing other issues again.
Mm-hmm. So yes, well, yeah, because I just think, you know, I wondered what your take on rewilding was.
My take on rewilding.
Yeah.
Rewilding is how you kind of take it. Rewilding, it's a big word.
It
I
is a
think,
big word.
and
It's a big word. Loaded.
It's misinterpreted by lots of people.
Yeah, well, I was taking it from.
But I think. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking from the point of view of allowing weeds to grow and not removing them. I mean, you mentioned that a little, but you carry on and answer your.
Yeah, well, the way I look at it, if you're going like proper rewilding, it's nearly impossible, because I'd say nearly 100% of Ireland has been touched by humans. So it's going to take some care. You can't just walk away from an area and say, right, we'll see what happens, because in to a certain extent, like, all the land has been damaged by us, even the bog lands, the highlands, and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have a gentle approach on how we look at the rewilding. Yeah, I see people like going rewild and just, oh, there's like 100 acres of grassland, and we say, I would just walk away from it. But you just can't go and do that. Like, you have to, because we've done the damage. We're going to have to kind of help it along as well. You can't just go back and say, no, just see what happens, because it's no good. Like, because you might end up with way more issues than what you started off with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's good to know. So then, is there anywhere you can get guidance on species, like, you know, what not to plant, or just stick with the pollinators, the all island pollinators sites for information?
If they go to the what do you call it? Yeah, it's the National Irish Pollinator Plan.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Loads of information in that. If they're looking to plant just in their own garden or something, like whatever area, the amount of information that's on it, like, there is phenomenal. And it's for even for community groups as well. They have information for schools, for businesses, like for farmers. Just it's very diverse, like, to have it all set out in different groups as well. So it's brilliant.
Thank you. I mean, I haven't looked it for the pod anyway, so I've had a look, so I know that there's loads there, but it's always good to get advice. It says, does skep beekeeping take place here in Ireland?
It did a long time ago, but the beekeeping, it's kind of moved on, and people are more focused on the honey production. A lot of people would be going in, like, and obviously want to harvest some honey. With the skep beekeeping, it's slightly more difficult to be able to harvest, because what you actually have to do, you have to remove the whole colony from the skep itself and rehome them. So you actually, every time like you're trying to harvest honey from it, you nearly have to destroy all the honeycomb. I know 1 or 2 people that have skeps, but you need like special housing for them. You actually, they call them bee holes. Like, so you would have old walls with little recesses in them where the little skeps sit in, completely protected from the weather. Yeah, there is definitely a few people that use them, but it's getting less and less and less.
Oh, thanks so much. Does anyone have any last questions before I just say thank you very much? Does anyone want to speak? No, I think we've come to an end then. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. That was fascinating. And so I've got the dates here for the natural beekeeping course we've put in. It's on Zoom. It'll be online. It's going to be Tuesday the 28th of July, and then August the 4th and August the 11th. It'll be 8 o'clock and it'll be an hour and a half, roughly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I've got the 5th and 6th of September to build a log beehive. So that will be actually at the pod, but the
that'll be actually pod.
Yeah. But the natural beekeeping course will be online. So, yeah. So thank you so much. That was brilliant. I don't know if people want to unmute themselves and say anything at all. I mean, you're getting loads of lovely comments here. So how much they love the talk and excellent presentation and so on. I don't know if you can see that. You have the information up, but loads.
It's something. I see a few things here popping up.
Yeah. So I mean, I've really
you're more than welcome. Like, more than welcome. Obviously, it was only just a very brief introduction. Like, and once we start starting to the natural beekeeping course, obviously we'll go more in depth.
Yeah.
To the whole different process, the actual proper life of the honeybees, like what's happening throughout the year. Then we'll move on then in the second class, of how to get started, what's kind of all needed. We'll be looking at different hive models as well, what's suitable for natural beekeeping. And then in the last one, that's kind of more the first steps, like once you get your bees, how to look after them properly.
Yeah, because I mean, I have to admit, I was thinking, presumably you could just leave them to it. You don't have to do the next bit. You can just
it all depends on the hive. If you buy a box standard square hive, you're going to have maintenance. You're going to have. Oh
no, I was thinking one of yours.
No, because those there, the log hives, it's as good as what you would find out in nature. So those are just pure for conservation, those kind of hives. You provide a habitat as the bees move in and they do their own thing then afterwards. But if you're providing different style hives, work needs to be done to it.
Okay, good to know. Well, thank you so much. I know it was really, really interesting, and I look forward to doing the next bit. Thank you.
Okay.
Now, good night, and really, I'm glad that more or less the internet behaved for us all round. So, phew.
Yeah, I'm going to give out to my daughters now for overusing the internet.